You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
Try to slice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood, art Ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood. Now, I hope you've been enjoying your summer. I've been trying to slow down and enjoy time with my family. That's why this summer it's mostly going to be encore presentations of some favorite episodes, although I am putting out at least, as I said, 3 or 4 new mini episodes every month. But one of the things I've really enjoyed is taking time to explore my community and get to know some of the offbeat little hidden gems. For today's episode, I'm doing something a little different from the normal format. I hit record so you can go along with me on a tour of a local gallery. Most of us tend to think of the big name museums to get a little culture, but the world is filled with smaller museums and cultural institutions that can give you a much more intimate look at art or whatever interests you. While I love a lot of the big players in art history, I've always wanted this show to be accessible and focus on the good beyond those traditional household names. That's why I've made episodes on everything from Michelangelo to Mario. Now, a little while ago, my friend Kelly, a fellow art teacher who was also actually a previous guest on my episode on Ivan Albright, I'll link it in the show notes, but anyways, she reached out to tell me about an amazing art collection in her school. While it's housed in a school, it isn't student artwork, or at least it wasn't produced by students. In LaGrange, Illinois, just a bit west of the city of Chicago, the Nettie McKinnon art collection consists of around 120 artworks by American artists, and today it is valued in the millions of dollars. From 1929 to 1960, students would raise money to buy artworks, including pieces by big names like John Singer Sargent. The collection was created by and for the benefit of students, so classes get to tour the gallery located in Park Junior High, but it's also open to the public. For those listeners in the Chicago area who want to check it out, I'll include some links in the show notes. But for now, listen as my local guides, Xenia and Joyce, share some of their insights into this amazing local treasure.
I am Xenia McBride. I was an art teacher here at Park Junior High for 20 years.
And I'm Joyce Fitch, and I was president of the Salt Creek American Art Foundation. Before that, I was an English teacher.
I'm here in an unexpected place, a gallery in a local junior high in the suburbs that has an extensive collection of fine art by a number of reasonably big name artists. Mm-hmm. All original works. We see oil on canvas. We see bronze works. Can you tell me just how did this McKinnon gallery get started? How did it come to be that the junior high has all of this great art?
There was a principal who was new, coming to a new school, Oak School, and her name was Nettie McKinnon. And Miss McKinnon really valued art, and she felt that students really grew as people when they saw art. So from 1929 till 1960, for her whole tenure, she had her kids sell magazines around Christmas time, mostly. And with the proceeds from those magazines, she went with a group of kids and she bought art. And that's how the art came about. And the art later was also added to by a class when it graduated. Now, Nettie's feeling was that the art needed to be accessible to the students. So she put the art all over the school. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing the art. And she had some very, very large paintings at the end of these old halls. All of our schools are over 100 years old, so you can imagine how big they are. So at the time, the kids saw the art all the time, even saw it in the science room. When you were over Bunsen burners, she had art. And they talked about it. It was just a part of their everyday life, which was exactly what Nettie wanted. And eventually, when she left, it went to Oak School. However, one of the things that happened because she had it all over the school was they became incredibly dirty. We all remember when it was a time when most people smoked. So the custodians after hours would be working and smoking. Sometimes the teachers would be. Bunsen burners, whatever, would be harmful to the paintings in terms of making them dirty. So there was a lot to do once a collection was put together to get it cleaned so that it was actually more presentable. And right now we have probably 80% of them have been cleaned, and they are absolutely gorgeous.
They are absolutely gorgeous. And I just think it is so cool, that idea that they're out and accessible to students. I mean, first in all the various schools here in LaGrange, but then within this gallery space, I mean, you know, this is the closest I can come to these great oil paintings without, like, you know, security guards staring me down and stuff like that. And I love that you can bring your students here to look at these works up close like that. It's amazing.
Well, it was all upstairs at Ogden School on the 3rd floor. And there were local women, they were called the Friends of Nettie J. And we would bring our students in 3rd grade, I think it was, and 5th grade, up to that gallery, and these women would give us a little tour. Well, in 2002, they were going to do work up on that floor, so we had to move the paintings. So we formed a group of teachers, parents, administrators, and we had meetings on, you know, what should we do? Well, we ended up hiring a lady named Jane Jacobs. She lived in Oak Park. She's a curator. And she came and spent a week at Ogden School before we took the paintings down. She photographed the front and the back of each painting and created a catalog for us so we knew what we had. And on her recommendation, she said, to make this a valued collection, you need to narrow it down. So this is an American art collection. Things that were on the religious area or foreign artists, they were more deaccessioned so that this became an American collection. Well, when we saw how valuable this was, that's when the district decided to create this room. And I think the Art Institute came out, helped us with security, temperature control, lighting. And then in 2015, they bumped out one other room, this small room here to the rear of where we're standing.
And I think one of the coolest things, like you were pointing out here, on the frames, we see class of 1944, class of whoever chose that work and donated that work. It's in some ways, it's like a time capsule where we get to see, you know, artwork from the past and what people valued, what those kids worked for and what they chose to leave behind as their legacy. And we have decades of that in this collection.
And in the hall right outside the gallery, we have Margaret Taylor Burroughs. She lived on the south side of Chicago, was an art educator, and she and her husband, their home is now the DuSable Museum. And she actually came to Cossett School in 1997, and they had an assembly, and she pulled two of we have 5 prints, linoleum block prints for the students, and they're hanging now in our hallway. And we have one of her lithographs.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I as an art lover, but also a teacher, I love these connections and these human touches. Right. And if you'll indulge me, I do want to capture just one thing. You were telling me before we started recording about this piece by John Singer Sargent. Could you please just tell us about that one again?
This is a piece that was a study that John Singer Sargent did of Adrian Iceland. And he did this study for about a 7-foot painting that was going to be in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And this is in pastels, and it's just from her bust up. And when we showed it to the Art Institute people, they said that that was the only one they had seen that was a pastel. So we were pretty impressed by that, as were they. And it's a very pretty painting. She's got a nice, pretty dress on it with ruffles, and her hair's up, and she looks very beautiful in this. Well, what he ended up doing was this very large, full-length painting, which she had to sit for several days. And he was not happy with her. And so he said, that she gossiped, so he gave her a gigantic ear in the painting that was a finished oil. And he also had her little finger look like it was broken because she tapped her finger while she was standing there for all those hours. And because he was so famous, they still paid for the painting, and it is currently hanging in the National Gallery of Art.
I love the petty little things that we can see in these artworks. And it's a nice reminder of the humanity, behind these famous names. There was a real person who was not above putting a little slight towards the model who irritated them.
You know what else? He later on in life, he said, I never did like doing portraits at all. And that's when he changed to do a lot of floral things and just a lot of different kinds of painting, but not portraits. So he gave that up, and he was really happy to do that, he said.
So this painting is Adam Emery Albright. He painted his two sons. He lived in the Salt Creek area. So this is Malvin and Ivan. Malvin grew up and became a sculptor. Ivan, as we all know, became a painter. His paintings there at the Art Institute, a little different. And
that is one of my favorites. You're showing Ivan Albright's
Dorian Gray.
The Dorian Gray painting. I actually did an episode on that
you
painting
did?
back in the day.
Yeah, and I know at the Art Institute they have this, and they also have Portrait of Ida, a woman sitting at a vanity table, same scary, creepy-looking person. And I think they have one, the door. The door, yeah.
With the hand coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a painting by Ivan and Emery. Ivan and
Malvin's
father. I can never remember Malvin.
Yeah.
It's a hard name to remember. You don't hear that one too often, but he painted the two boys out on vacation or something.
And this is in Illinois, on an Illinois river. So we know that it was probably in downstate Illinois. The boys are twins.
Yeah.
And we also have an article about the story behind the most famous painting, in that is a piece of scenery that was being painted. And so what happened was Ivan wanted to brag about this piece of scenery. So he went out and he told a lot of newspapers and magazines, we're doing this piece of scenery for this movie. And what happened was, in the movie, they didn't want people to know that this piece of scenery was going to disintegrate at the end of the movie. And so they didn't like the fact that he publicized it. So they kicked him out, and his brother actually supposedly finished painting that.
Really?
Yes. I will find the article for you, because I think you'd like to read that.
All the base stories.
So what else do we have here that you love?
Well,
Shall we
Joseph
go back?
Fleck, I love Joseph Fleck. His son wrote a book about his father, and then came to us and asked us if they could use this for the book jacket of his life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But after that, we got it cleaned.
Right.
So if you look at the book jacket is much more orange. And what I found out and didn't know is that when you get something cleaned, they take pictures as they go along to prove what they've done, because some of us novices wouldn't know what they did. So he took all of the top glaze off of it, and he showed us a pile of Q-tips with orange tips that was probably a bushel basket full.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
They take the Q-tip, dip it in a solution, and he starts in a little area. When it takes all that varnish off, then he goes on the other side, and he had a pile of Q-tips after cleaning. That picture is somewhere. I know I saw it once, yeah.
Just once again, the art in real life, so much brighter and more vivid than we can ever get in the photos, which is why I think it is so cool that students are getting to see these pieces in real life, in person.
And it is interesting when the students come. I'll always ask, how many of you have been to the Art Institute? Well, it depends on the class, but many have not.
Which is amazing, because it's only 15, 20 miles
I know, it
away.
breaks my heart. And I tell them, every time I open that door and turn on the lights, it's like finding your grandmother's jewelry box. And you open it up, and all this glitter and sparkle and beauty. is in front of you. And they come in and you see their mouths open and their eyes get real wide. Yeah, it's pretty special.
You often hear that from the kids when they come in, you often hear them go, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
Because they have no sense. They've never been in anything like this.
And many times they'll say, "Are these real?" And I go, "Yes, the artist stood in front of this painting and actually did this. These are the real deal." Pauline Leonard's Palmer, these are two of our women artists in here. She was the first woman to have a one-woman show at the Art Institute.
Really?
Right here. Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That was the first one-woman show was Pauline
Yep.
Leonard's Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is of 1916.
1916,
so-
Village Scenery.
which would explain, again, the style, that sort of impasto and everything that we associate with Impressionism and Post-Impressionism.
And both of these were painted in Illinois as part someplace down, southern Illinois. Both of the women's paintings were.
Client, I find so interesting. He had a stroke. He was a right-handed person. He had a stroke and had to learn to use his left hand. And he painted this with his left hand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when the kids hear that, they're amazed.
I mean, it really is. I mean, I would have trouble capturing that detail and that
Yes.
subtlety,
Right.
even with my dominant
Right.
hand.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
retraining yourself.
Yeah.
So we're looking at here, you've got 3 Frank Dudley paintings in the collection.
In the collection, yeah. And he lived on the Indiana Dunes. He had a cabin, and he also was a conservationist. So he would protest, and with other people, he wanted Indiana to turn it into a state or national park, which they eventually did. And normally people don't get to live on a state park, national park, and he was given permission to live in his cottage 108, he and his wife, but he had to pay rent, and his rent was 1 painting a year. Indiana has the largest collection of Frank Dudleys.
I love that because you
Yeah.
hear these stories
I love
about
the stories.
artists paying with their work, but like
Right.
I always thought it was like a trope, a cliche
Right.
in TV shows
Yeah.
and movies. Like
Yeah.
the fact that he literally paid his rent with
Yeah.
a painting.
Yeah, and on
is
that
incredible.
Buck painting, I think it was.
And this is one that once again is not worth the $10,000, but it's by a local artist, Vickery, who lived in Western Springs and had a studio in LaGrange. So he was very local. So a lot of people have his paintings, and they're usually big, tall ships. So everybody always asks, do you have one? Well, we have quite a few, but they aren't really in the gallery because they're all pretty much the same, and Nettie really wasn't very fond of him. But he tried to get her to buy something, and she said, no, I won't buy it. And so some people told him, if you put a child in your painting, maybe she would accept it as a donation. So in fact, that's exactly what he did. He took one child with a bucket, and put it in a landscape. He already had this, obviously, because it's a rocky area where you would not have a child playing on the shore, but she did accept it as a donation.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to show me around your gallery. Really appreciate it.
Great.
It was fun.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.